So picture this. It's December 2016 in a quiet little neighborhood in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this community is completely paralyzed by fear. A really brutal murder has just happened, and with no clear answers, everyone is starting to look at their neighbors, wondering who could be next. Let's get into this incredible story of a crime that was, amazingly, solved by the victim himself.
And this quote from a neighbor, wow, it just says it all, doesn't it? I mean, can you even imagine that feeling? Knowing a killer is out there, someone who just committed this incredibly violent act and then, poof, vanished. The police were totally stumped, and the entire community was just holding its breath, wondering who it could be.
So who was the man at the center of this whole tragedy? His name was Don Fluitt, and he was 54 years old. And by all accounts, Don was a guy who had really overcome a tough past. He'd made mistakes, sure, but he fought so hard to turn his life around. He became a devout churchgoer, and most importantly, a truly dedicated father.
And if you want to know what kind of guy Don had become, look no further than this: Spaghetti Sunday. It wasn't just about a meal, it was this beautiful tradition he started with his 11-year-old daughter, Sienna. Together, they would feed the homeless, and it actually grew from just the two of them into this amazing community event. This was the man everyone in his life knew and loved.
But then, December 29th happened, and everything just came to this horrifying end. Don was a really punctual guy, so when he didn't show up for a big meeting at work and wasn't answering his phone, his coworkers, they knew something had to be wrong. So they went over to his house to check on him, and what they found in his garage was an absolute nightmare.
The scene was just shocking. The attack was so personal, so violent. Don had suffered from blunt force trauma, he'd been strangled, and he had this massive wound across his throat. But there was something else. The cuts on his hands. They told a really crucial part of the story. Don Fluitt did not go down without a fight. He fought back against his attacker with everything he had.
And this part tells you so much about the killer's mindset. Because after this brutal attack, they didn't just run away. They stayed. They tried to clean up. An empty bleach bottle, wet towels still tumbling in the washing machine, and a freshly mopped floor. It told Detective Matthew Kaplan that the killer had time, they probably knew the house, and they were desperately trying to erase every single trace of themselves.
So the investigation kicks off, but right away it hits a brick wall. There were no signs of a break-in, which, what does that tell you? It suggests Don might have actually known his killer. And since nothing was stolen, robbery was off the table. The motive? It was a complete and total mystery.
Right away, two main suspects pop up. First, Don's estranged brother, Dennis, and second, his landlord, a guy named Benny Ruiz. Both men had a history of conflict with Don. Both were strangely found inside the house after the murder, and wouldn't you know it, both were quick to point the finger right at the other guy. But with no solid alibis and no real evidence, police were just stuck.
Of course, in a case like this, you have to look at the ex's new husband. So police checked out Terry White. He was Sienna's stepfather, so he was definitely a person of interest. But his alibi seemed perfect, rock solid. Both his sister and his boss confirmed exactly where he was on the night of the murder. So for the time being, he was totally in the clear.
With the investigation completely stalled, it really felt like this case might just go cold. But then, a breakthrough. And it came from the most unexpected place imaginable. A neighbor who had unknowingly been watching all along.
One of Don's neighbors, just terrified by what happened, decided to check her home's security footage from that night. And as she's scanning through this grainy black and white video, she spots a dark figure lurking around. Her heart just sinks. She knew she had to call the police right away. And what the video revealed was this chillingly calculated plan. You see a hooded figure walk up and intentionally tip over Don's trash can, creating a diversion. They knew Don was the kind of person who wouldn't just leave it a mess. And just as they predicted, when Don gets home and goes to fix it, the killer seizes their chance, slipping right into the garage behind it.
And then you get this absolutely heart-stopping moment. As the killer sneaks into the garage, they accidentally trip the safety sensor. The door starts rolling back up, its light flashing. Don, who's already inside his house, actually hears a strange noise, but just dismisses it. The killer was this close to getting caught, but they quickly hit the button, closing the door again, and stayed hidden in the dark. So here's the crucial thing, right? This video proved the killer wasn't some random stranger. This person knew Don's schedule, they knew he'd be dropping his daughter off, they knew he was the type of guy who would stop to fix that trash can, and they knew he'd probably go to the garage to smoke before bed. This wasn't random at all.
It was a planned execution. So the video was a huge lead, but it didn't show a face. The police were still missing that one key piece of evidence that could definitively point to the killer. And it turns out, in his final, desperate moments, Don had provided it himself.
The footage gave them the how, but it just couldn't give them the who. The identity of that shadowy figure was still a total mystery, and the case was, once again, at a standstill.
But the key wasn't on a hard drive. It was on the victim. Remember those defensive wounds, the cuts on his hands? Well, during that desperate struggle for his life, Don had scratched his attacker. He had collected their DNA right under his own fingernails.
So how is that even possible? Well, it's thanks to this incredible forensic tool called Touch DNA. Basically, every time we touch something, we leave behind these tiny, invisible skin cells. And in a violent struggle like this one, enough of those cells can be transferred to be collected and analyzed, creating a genetic profile of the person they belong to. Don's last living act was to capture his killer's identity.
So the sample goes to the lab, and for 12 long, agonizing weeks after the murder, everyone waits. Then, the results from the DNA sample finally come in, and the answer? Well, it had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. The DNA was a 100% match for Terry White, Sienna's stepfather, the man with the airtight alibi. And just like that, that alibi completely fell apart. The story he told police about being at his sister's house, it was a total lie, carefully crafted to hide a monstrous truth.
So the big question is, why? Why would he do it? It really came down to this deep, simmering resentment. You see, Terry didn't see Don as the reformed man everyone else admired. In his eyes, Don was still the drug-abusing loser from his past. He was just consumed by jealousy over the bond Don had with Sienna, and he saw Don as this dark cloud over his life that he just had to get rid of.
Terry White was arrested and charged. He tried to blame his own wife, but the DNA evidence was just undeniable. In August 2018, he was convicted of first-degree murder, aggravated burglary, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to life in prison plus an additional 12 years.
And that's really the incredible part of this story. In the end, Don's sheer determination to live is what brought his killer to justice. No, he couldn't save his own life, but his final act of defiance made sure that the man who took him away from his daughter would never be able to harm her or anyone else ever again. So, we're left with this really powerful thought. Even when he was faced with certain death, Don's instinct was just to fight back. That final struggle didn't just leave a mark on his killer, it left the one clue that would speak for him long after he was gone. It really makes you think. What does that tell us about the incredible power of the human will to survive?